Let me welcome Liz Lawson now, who's going to lead us through a Q&A session, so get your questions ready.
Thank you very much, Claire and Jeremy. I thought it was really good. And a bit like all of you, I'm sure, we've started on a sustainability journey. We've put in LED lights and we might be separating waste in the staff room. But actually, I think what we're talking here is about a much higher level, about having a policy at board level and really measuring what we're doing for sustainability. And I think what's interesting about this is you don't have to do this. You could walk away from here today and not do a thing. No one's going to come and tell you off. There's nobody from a government department saying you're not doing enough. But actually, I think we've got a responsibility. Many of us have had our companies in our communities for many, many years. So, and a bit like Phil was saying to us earlier, that our customers trust us. And this is part of that trust, isn't it? About doing the right thing. So I think, there's a lot to learn from this. And even if you go away and what we started with was like a list of things that we are doing and a list of things we would like to be doing. And we put that on a poster and put it in our window so that our customers know that we know this is on our agenda and we should be doing it. But it's a starting point. So I think you've got a really valuable resource here now in Jeremy and Claire. So I thought I'd start the ball rolling and ask them some questions while you have a think about what questions you would like to ask them. So first of all, Claire, one of the things we can do, obviously being sellers of stuff, we are flying in the face of sustainability. But what can we do to find sustainable products and ensure that the suppliers are doing what they're not just greenwashing, that they are giving us proper sustainable products?
Well, we mentioned earlier about B Corp, and they have a whole list of companies and suppliers that you can look at. So I think looking at some of these accreditation bodies is absolutely a place to start. The other thing that I would mention, I mentioned the SustainX platform, and we're talking with AIS about getting you guys wider membership. But even at the moment, there are a whole load of free roundtables on there that really deal with really practical issues like substitutes around packaging, recyclable materials, sustainability labelling, what does it mean, how to kind of spot greenwashing, circular economy, etc. And what I would say with that as well is because there's participation in the community from right across Europe, there's a lot of companies and small businesses, particularly in Germany, where they've had to be pushing far, far harder on this, that are kind of sharing what they're doing, and there's a lot of innovation coming out. So you can download them, listen to them on your drive to and from work or whatever, but actually it really starts to open your eyes about what to be looking for and where to look.
Oh, thank you. And Jeremy, if we have got a policy, how do we maintain that we're, keeping up with it and we're following it through? What ideas have you got around that?
Yeah, I think this is where the processes you have in your business, I don't even want to use that word. At the simplest level, what I do is I put in a weekly meeting of 1 hour on sustainability. At the simplest, just squeezing that in the agenda and attending it and chairing it, and then monitoring projects over the weeks, over the months, it, in my view, has delivered some of the greatest results. Because otherwise it's at the end of agenda and it always falls off. So it needs its own space in your agenda in order that the projects and the focus and the attention is given the time. And you'll surprise yourself, just 1 hour a week actually can turn in several months into something quite spectacular that you wouldn't have expected if you dedicate that time.
Thank you, Jeremy. Has anybody got a question from the floor?
Recycling carpet. I find it incredibly disappointing that all the carpet, we bought some carpet balers and we've invested £30,000 in the capability of recycling carpet. And basically we cannot recycle carpet in the way that it used to. It used to go for where horses trotted round on and to make it softer for them, etc. And it seemed like a good idea, basically. Well, now you can't send these carpets to this sort of recycling because there might be leaching into the ground and various other problems have come forth. And effectively these balers that we bought some time ago are redundant now because there is nowhere to send these materials for recycling. So I find it very frustrating that having made some attempts to play our part, we've been prevented from seeing that through because there aren't any recycling plants to send this carpet to. So I'd be interested, it's probably not something that you've ever come across before, but it's a frustration when we want to play our part and we can't complete our task.
I can't answer that, if I may, but I'm going to give, I don't want to avoid answering your question, but I want to tell you what I've been surprised by, because it might be part of the journey. I have been surprised by what I keep finding every time I search online. I run a podcast called Saving Tomorrow's Planet, and I'm always looking for speakers, and I have found two fantastic areas I didn't know about, which was aerobic digesters, which eat all our waste food, and there's a whole industry in Britain that I'd never heard about, and yet we're now, with some of the companies I'm consulting around the food industry, turning that into renewable energy and compost. So there's a big tick, unknown something. And what I thought you were going to talk about was actually bringing and taking carbon and putting it into the sea or into the ground. And again, I've discovered more companies than I even knew existed are working heavily in that area. So those are two ticks. I don't know the answer to your question. I'm more than happy, if you like, that we have a little conversation afterwards and have a dig around, because frankly, anything to do with clothing and the blended fabrics we know, carpets would seem a huge area that is worth looking at, and perhaps we'll have a chat and see if we can come up with an answer, because it would be sad to give up, particularly since you spent the money.
Just one very quick point on the carpet front. I did a sustainability leadership course at London Business School a little while ago, and the main case study they orientate on is a carpet manufacturer in the US. I'm trying to desperately remember the name. I think it was like Dexter or Desco or whatever, who basically revolutionized the whole trade because they found a way, they invested in doing their own recycling, then basically improved their products to not only have carpets that they could recycle, but carpets that filtered air and improved air quality in office buildings and hotels. They're now the sort of major provider for lots of the big office development and hotel chains across the US, because they have in their contracts they take their carpets back when they are done with, which means that the emissions and the impact of the hotel chains and offices are all reduced, etc. And they're now actually recycling carpets for all of their competitors because they're the only ones that can do it. So I think if you find, but they had to take, they had to invest, they had to take their board through a whole journey of, this is a long-term benefit for our business, it's not going to be a quick fix. But yeah, they are the London Business School's sustainability case study of choice, so it's maybe worth having a little read up on that.
Thank you, Claire. Any other questions from the floor? Yeah.
Your presentation was excellent, Jeremy.
Thank you.
The thing about sustainability, so many brands say they're sustainable. We've been working with a brand recently that says they're sustainable. All their goods are made in China. So straight away we're suspicious. But with your L'Oreal background, the first sustainable brand I came across, and I appreciate your comments on what I'm saying, is when Lauder launched Origins, which they really marketed as sustainable, and I see they're now in Marks and Spencer's. Is that a good example, or, sorry, it's slightly embarrassing.
No, it's not embarrassing me at all, no.
I find it very hard. Oh, we're sustainable, this is sustainable,
Yeah.
And then you look a bit more detail,
Yeah.
and I wonder just how sincere a lot of these brands really are.
I think I'm going to answer in two ways. I think a lot of these companies, and I know L'Oreal, and I'm not with them for 5 years, have invested effort from the leadership. And by the way, it all starts at the top. That's one thing. And this is always down to one person at the top driving it. And the CEO drove it to drive down the reduction in packaging, to simplify ingredients, to be clearer on the sourcing and auditing of the source is fundamental in all of this. But I still am frustrated with the whole cosmetic industry that we're still in plastic. That's not acceptable in my view. There are great sources of alternative packaging, which you've sort of been mentioning, but are out there if you research, that could easily replace the plastic. So I think they've gone half the way, but they're faltering at the most important hurdle, which is replacing plastic with cardboard that is from a natural source. The intent can be there, but let me tell you a quick story. When I was at the Body Shop, which of course is, stood itself up for ethical brilliance, and we always said all our ingredients were ethically sourced, and I then one day asked to see the sourcing of every single ingredient. And out of the 680, we could only guarantee that of 20. After 3 months, we had 660 sourced, and discovered that we still had a whole number that were absolutely compromising ethical standards that we wanted. And it took us many months to eradicate, and partly because palm oil is one of them. So you have to be a rigorous detective right down to those fields if you're going to look yourselves in the eye and say, you know, we exactly know where we come from and we're an ethical company in all the sourcing, let's say. It's a lot of work, but it's also rewarding because we were then able to turn that into positive claims, because then we could say 600 products are absolutely sourced and biodiverse, and that's much more exciting than we've got 600 random products. So for every problem, I think there's a marketing or sales opportunity. That's the message I'm trying to provoke here. So thank you.
Question at the back of the room.
Hi, this is a question for Jeremy. So you were mentioning how Tesla increased their sales by 60% in 21-22. And as I saw it, a huge factor of that was the incentives the government gave with the VAT reduction and that sort of thing. And with furniture, you can buy furniture that's more sustainable, for example, sofas, but there's a huge cost increase for that product. There's no help from the government for the customers to be able to buy a product like that. So my question to you is, how can we incentivize customers? What sort of marketing initiatives would you recommend to be able to push those products but not be so expensive that you're pricing yourself above the market? Because most customers aren't that interested. They'd rather save that money and have a sofa that they will keep for 20 years. So there's an element of, it's not fast fashion. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. So I think, first of all, that comes and reinforces my point about my complete disappointment in governments, and therefore it's non-political, it's just all of them. You know, look how the Labour have already rolled back several claims. You know, why can't they just have the balls, whatever they are, to stick with it, stand with it, and they will be rewarded, is my strong statement. I think there's 2 points to you. We have little proof, frankly, that people will pay a premium. And whenever anybody links the word premium and sustainability, that worries me, because we're in a competitive world which is all about essentially the lowest cost for everything and convenience. I think I would be challenging you to say, what would it take to make a price competitive, sustainable product? And see where it might go, because I don't feel comfortable that a sustainable sofa should cost more, necessarily. And one question is, who wants stuff for life? You know, that was an old British assumption of the British motorbike industry 50 years ago. And we saw that that was not what people want. So that's a slightly side point, but maybe connected. I'm more than happy to have a chat afterwards, but that's where you've got to go right back to the source, right back to those fields where that trees are cut down, and see if you go all the way back up, can you actually achieve what I just said, which is sustainable at a competitive price? It's not going to work every time. Fashion, the reason we put polyester in with cotton is because it's so much cheaper, and that's why you can get so fast fashion. That's a different problem. But that would be the first step I would take. Does that connect with you? Can you picture that? Can you engage with that, or am I? So I always like to get a bit of feedback, otherwise
Sorry, thank you for your answer. There's an element where you were saying how, you know, is a sofa isn't for life and people don't want that, but when you're buying something which is £2,000, £3,000, £4,000,
right,
it's not something that you're going to throw away. I can only speak for where we are in the market, where you're selling furniture that people are going to have for a very long time. Okay. You were talking about when they're cutting down trees, that's not the part that's not sustainable. It's the fact that when you're finished with a sofa, the only one place it can go is a landfill. And if you can't put the sofa in a landfill and you want to recycle it, there has to be, I think off the top of my head, staples and certain things can't be on there. But that prohibits the manufacturing process to lower the price down.
Great.
Sorry, I just wanted to add that clarity.
No, do you mind if I just answer 1 second? Because I'm sorry to go into specific, but it is quite interesting because the illustration, the points somehow give the opportunity. So I worked for a guy who makes foam mattresses, of all things. And the guy has invented a foam spring which will cause no glue and 30% less foam, and it's completely recyclable, and he charges 30% more for it, actually. He's invented a process that doesn't need the staples. So, not to answer it fully here, but I now understand your problem because it's the same as this one, and it would be interesting to say, okay, how do we start an innovation process to make a wooden staple or a biodegradable staple or a non-metal staple, because then you'd solve it down the end. I'm not here to tell you how or where, but at least that would be the question I would be asking. Thank you. We'll leave it on that one. Thank you, though. And we can chat later if you want.
I'm afraid, Peter, we've run out of time. I'm very sorry. But Jeremy and Claire will be here at tea, and we'll be having tea in the engine room just behind just behind us there. But thank you very much for all engaging in the process, and thank you once again to Claire and Jeremy.